Good morning, and welcome in this new lesson about new frontiers of excimer laser, dermatology through a magnifying glass. First of all, let's perform an insight into excimer lasers. Excimer lasers belong to the category of molecular lasers. And in particular, these exploit transitions between different electronic states of so-called excimer molecules, we can say. In particular, if we analyze the potential energy curve of a diatomic molecule for both ground and excited states, we can explain the meaning of the term excimer. In fact, being the ground state repulsive, the molecule is unable to exist in such a state, so we can only have a monomer state at ground level. Despite that, we notice that there is a minimum for the excited state, so the molecule is bound in this state, so it exists in a dimer form. From here, we derive the term excimer, coming from the contraction of the expression excited dimer. So, if we suppose that in our generic material volume a big amount of excimers is produced, we can have laser action under proper conditions between the upper bound state and the ground free state, the lower free state. Now let's mention three main properties for our excimer laser. First of all, we can say that the typical emission wavelength is in the spectral window that goes from the ultraviolet to the near ultraviolet. Moreover, after the stimulated emission, the molecule reaches the ground state, and due to the repulsive nature of the ground state itself, the molecule dissociates rapidly, and reabsorption of the radiation is not possible, so the lower level can be considered as almost always empty, we can say, giving the typical behavior of a 4-level laser. In the end, we can say that the transition results in being broad and goes from 20 up to 100 centimeters to the -1. Now let's see the excimer laser principle. So the excimer laser is first of all based on a combination, a mixture of a noble gas atom and halogen gas. In the active medium, we even account for a buffer gas, usually neon, that is used as a medium to transport energy. In particular, when a high voltage electrical discharge is delivered in a laser cavity containing the gases combine to form a higher level energy compound, we can say. And when there is the dissociation of this high energy compound, a photon of energy is released, and it corresponds to the bond energy of the noble gas halogen molecule. The wavelength of light is at this point amplified through, we can say, through the system. It is amplified through the system and results in the production, we can say, of a high energy discrete pulse of laser energy. So the specific wavelength of an excimer laser in general depends on the composition of the gases that are used in the laser system. In particular, we can say the typical wavelengths for the excimer laser range from 193 nanometers to 308 nanometers, but it can even arrive to 351 nanometers, for instance. So excimer lasers have, we can say, short wavelengths, and as a consequence, photons will have high energy. This results in a reduced interaction time between the laser radiation and the material. Therefore, typically, the heat-affected zone is minimized. Now, if we look at this table, we find these three main categories used in laboratories: the argon fluoride excimer laser, the krypton fluoride excimer laser, and the xenon chloride excimer laser. This last one will be considered in our applications regarding vitiligo, psoriasis, and alopecia. And we can say that the first two are implied mainly in laser eye surgery, and the last one mainly in dermatology. Here there is a display of the basic characteristics of the excimer lasers available on the market. In general, processing using excimer lasers has been proved to have higher precision and reduced heat damage zones compared with the case of CO2 or neodymium YAG lasers. So in general, for this reason, the applications of the excimer lasers in industry have increased. In particular, in this case, we can measure in particular, or better saying, we can first of all focus our attention on the case of the application in terms of tracking systems. And in particular, we can even see that in the commercial applications, beams have typically Gaussian or super Gaussian profile. If we want to select the best excimer laser, we should look at the top FDA-approved excimer lasers that are used today by surgeons all over the country. And we can say that the best one among the excimer lasers, in particular, can be considered as being the STARS for IR excimer laser system, this one, from the standpoint of its characteristics and performances. Moreover, we have this focus here that is telling that the higher is the frequency, the faster is the treatment, because the lower is the time involved, obviously, but the higher is the thermal effect. Now, in particular, we can say that the excimer lasers are used in pulsed regime. If we want to analyze some mathematical data according to these excimer lasers, we can say first of all that we have energy levels that span between 160 millijoules to 180 millijoules, but actually we can say that in the case of our excimers, they can even arrive to 2 joule. Here we see that, for instance, for the argon fluoride, we have 500 millijoule and so on. So in general, they can even arrive to 2 joule. But for instance, clinical applications, even regarding laser eye surgery or so on, they can span even in this lower range. Then we have high repetition rate lasers. They go from 10 Hz to 500 Hz that are commercially available. And here we even span between 1 and 1000 Hz, so we have these kind of exceptions, but more or less the range is this one. And the average power arrives to 150 watts. The pump duration goes from 10 to 20 nanoseconds. The efficiency, as we can see from here, ranges around 2%, more or less. Then we have the data regarding the radius and the concept of pre-ionization achieved for standard systems, but we need in general more complex arrangements in case of larger systems. And then we have the line width. The line width goes from, we can say, for our lasers, the one that we are treating here in this table, from 223 gigahertz in the case of xenon fluoride to 17 terahertz for the argon fluoride. Now, in particular, now we can focus on the 308 nanometer excimer laser, which has been in particular approved by the Food and Drug Administration for the treatment of pathologies like psoriasis and vitiligo. Effectively, the ability to treat localized areas has led to many studies that have determined its potential in the treatment of focal diseases that are related to inflammation or hypopigmentation. One possibility, which has been introduced in the context of a leading technology, is the X-Track Velocity XL 400. Which is an excimer laser that has been proposed by a group of medical engineers and research teams in collaboration with the Harvard Medical School and the Wellman Center of Photomedicine in Boston. Moreover, we can say that it has soon become an object of research programs. It has been cited in over 150 clinical studies, and it was based on approved clinical protocols recommended by the American Academy of Dermatology. And as we have previously mentioned, its objective is the treatment of vitiligo, psoriasis, but even atopic dermatitis and alopecia. Now, first of all, vitiligo. So what is vitiligo? Vitiligo is a chronic autoimmune disorder, meaning that the immune cells attack the body's own healthy tissues by mistake. And this causes patches of skin to lose pigment or color. This happens when melanocytes, that are the skin cells responsible for the pigments, are destroyed, causing the skin to turn a white color. In general, Frontiers of Medicine give the possibility to repigment the sick area through a mechanism that is based effectively on the use of a xenon chloride excimer laser. We are talking about a monochromatic wavelength, as we can see here from this spectrum, at 308 nanometers ultraviolet light, that is used to impact in a correct way on the psoriasis spectrum. In particular, a sophisticated liquid light guide system made up by a system of optical fibers is used for the delivery of a highly targeted super narrowband beam of UV light to the areas that are affected by vitiligo or psoriasis. The beam is, we can say, delivered in a precisely localized, we can say, way, only to the colorless 6 spots, without acting on the surrounding healthy part. Then there is the release of high energy with extremely short exposition times. We can say that we are talking about 1 joule within 3-4 seconds. And as a consequence, we have the induction of suicide or apoptosis of toxic lymphocytes, T, that are the ones responsible of the melanin carence, of the lack of melanin. And then we have a rapid repigmentation starting from survived color cells. Here, I just introduced this slide to remember this our focus, that is the 308 nanometer xenon chloride excimer laser. We are talking about an excimer laser that is the most validated laser modality in vitiligo treatment, because the rate of success has been demonstrated to be quite high, with 75% repigmentation rate. And here we have the summary of the mechanism of action. Moreover, here we have the protocol for the clinical treatments that are involving this laser modality, and we have also the body sites, including the face and neck, trunk and extremities, and hands and feet lesions. Here we can even see the initial dose involved in the therapy. And in general, with this laser modality, we can say that the most effective responses are obtained for the face and neck. Now, moreover, the studies we can say about lasers have concerned even a combination between monochromatic therapy and other species, like inhibitors or immunomodulators, that could enhance the clinical frame of this treatment. In particular, it was demonstrated that the combination treatment of tacrolimus plus the 308 nanometer excimer laser is superior with respect to the laser monotherapy for the treatment of UV-resistant vitiligo lesions. Moreover, it was stated that a percentage of tacrolimus of 0.1% in terms of concentration was more effective with respect to a 0.03% concentration. The advantages of the combined therapy come in terms of time response, of rate of repigmentation, and also of quality of the reaction to the therapy. Tacrolimus, what is tacrolimus? It is a macrolide immunomodulator that is responsible of the inhibition of the T lymphocyte activation, and it modulates the release of inflammatory mediators from skin mast cells and basophils. We can say that tacrolimus penetrates human skin with no systemic accumulation after repeated applications, and in general there is a low systemic absorption, with we can say the majority of patients that have blood concentrations of this drug below the limits of quantification. Here there is this graph taken from the clinical journal, where in particular we can see the repigmentation rate, this histogram representing some experiments made up on the group A and group B, and we see in particular how much this therapy, this combined therapy, is effective. There are also other possibilities for the combination therapy, including other species, other immunomodulators or inhibitors, but the most effective has been demonstrated to be the one with tacrolimus. Now, on the other side, we have that another illness that can be treated through the same therapy is alopecia. Alopecia is another autoimmune disease characterized by round patches of non-scarring hair loss. And in particular, this is mediated by lymphocytes affecting the hair follicles. We can say that various lasers have been, in general, suggested for the, we can say, treatment of the alopecia, and the effect of the 310 nanometer excimer laser, once again, was the most studied. There were even other studies, including neodymium doped yttrium aluminum garnet, erbium glass laser, and so on, that have also been assessed for the, we can say, treatment of alopecia, but in the end, the most successful treatment was the one involving the 308 nanometer laser therapy, excimer laser therapy. So once again, we have the employment of the excimer laser at this wavelength, used to impact correctly on the hairless regions. Once again, we have a mechanism of delivery. And for the procedure, we have that the principle is that the beam is delivered only to the missing hair spots with a release of high energy, once again with extremely short time pulses. Like in your previous case treatment, there is the death of the toxic lymphocytes T that were the cause of the lacking hair zones. And as a consequence, there is the progressive regrowth of hair and rapid multiplication of the pillifer cells. Then there are even delicate zones such as head and eyebrows that can be treated with high efficiency. Moreover, for what concerns the possible scenarios, we have, first of all, lots of advantages that come from the use of this therapy involving this excimer laser. First of all, we don't have any harmful side effects like erythema or blisters. We have no direct UV exposure to healthy skin, no necessity for daily skincare attention. We have a quick disappearance of symptomatology, no monthly injections, so this means that the procedure is not excessively dilated in time and much lower cost. So in general, it is not too expensive or demanding in financial terms. And for what concerns this table, we have these studies carried on a certain number of patients for each sickness and for each illness. And in particular, we can say that in these studies, it is possible to see that there is a high rate of efficacy and of efficiency of the, we can say, use of the excimer laser for treating these diseases. But we can say that the efficacy of the excimer laser in alopecia had the lowest results, in particular with respect to the vitiligo studies. And we can say that the lowest results in the case of alopecia were reached for the alopecia universalis and alopecia totalis diseases in particular. And here we have even the number of visits that are reported that are the minimum ones required to start seeing effects of the therapy. In the end, we can say that excimer laser applications open lots of paths towards research in the medical sector based on the knowledge and deepening of the interaction between laser and skin, trying to minimize the severity of eventual adverse effects as much as possible. Of course, dermatology is a sector in which there are lots of physical weaknesses caused by these autoimmune diseases. Strong socio-aesthetic impact should be considered, and consequently low level of self-acceptance in everyday reality. Moreover, despite beneficial innovations in technology, there are also new, we can say, bioethical issues arising. At present, the use of lasers in medicine is extensive. Lasers have found the most beneficial and useful applications in medicine. They have established a sort of revolution in the medical field. Moreover, laser medicines are involved in various applications such as cosmetic treatments, imaging modalities, lesion removal like the ones that we have mentioned, and diagnostic methodologies. Inevitably, a technology with such a wide spectrum of applications that go from the medical to the paramedical to the non-medical affects society. So in general, we should always take into account the importance of ethical implications in a context well debated and bound to undergo even more innovations concerning all possible combination of species and treatments to find a balance between medical implications and individual sensibility. So thank you for the attention.